Golden Dayan. Welcome to the HerraVintage YouTube channel, home of all things vintage. And today, we're talking about some of the best Reykjavík churches. Hallgrímskirkja, Reykjavík's most famous church and architectural landmark. One of the largest buildings in the entire country, this unique church is a major magnet for those visiting the country from abroad. And I really don't blame them. Wherever you are within the city, chances are you'll be able to see the tip of the tower. Located on top of a hill called Skólavörðuholt, the actual structure itself is 74.5 meters tall. Designed by state architect Guðjón Samúelsson in the late 1930s, construction would begin in the year 1945. It would take a little over 40 years for the entire building to be finished. The style itself is said to be inspired by motifs of the dramatic Icelandic landscape, particularly the columnar basalt formations of Svartifoss. The overall structure could probably be classified as a expressionist neo-Gothic style. Guðjón likely got inspiration from a contemporary building of the time, being built in Denmark, that being Grundtvigskirke, designed by Danish architect Peder Vilhelm Jensen Klint. Sorry for those Danish viewers out there, I do not know how to pronounce Danish whatsoever. With that said, you can definitely see some similarities between the two structures. I absolutely love this building. I truly do. However, it isn't the only noteworthy church within the city. Far from it, actually. In this video, I would like to show a few others which I think are worth a visit if you plan a trip here to Reykjavík. And if you do have that church obsession, follow me and I will show you the light of day. The first church on this list is the Fríkirkjan, literally the Free Church. It is an independent Lutheran church, separate from the state-sanctioned Church of Iceland. The organization was established in the late 19th century, and the church would be built in two phases, from 1903 and 1905. At this time, there was literally one other church building established, and I will mention that one later in the video. Moreover, there would be an addition built upon in 1924 in the back of the church, made out of concrete. It is likely that you will not miss this one since it's basically in the heart of the downtown area, right next to Tjörnin Pond, a big tourist spot in its own right. The building is reminiscent of many other old-fashioned Icelandic country churches that you would see around the country, made out of timber. One thing I really like about this one is the beautiful spire of its tower. It is definitely one you cannot miss when you're in Reykjavík. The second entry is one that might only be interesting for its style of architecture. Áskirkja is located in Laugardalur, an area east of the downtown center. The church itself dominates the Laugardalur Park below. A structure of raw concrete and grit, it oddly resembles the fictitious Eye of Sauron from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. One thing is for certain, Icelanders post-World War II really loved contemporary, modern styles when it came to new churches, and this one is no exception. In what seemed like a brutalist style, was designed in the 1970s and would be fully completed by 1983. Truth be told, I am not a huge fan of most of the modern churches in the city. However, I do recognize their importance to the history of Icelandic domestic architecture, and I really do think there are a few people out there who would love to see this particular one. You can get amazing views of it through the Laugardalur Park and Botanical Garden from below. This one might not be on the average tourist's itinerary list when visiting Reykjavík. If anything, it is probably something you will likely stumble across. This lovely cathedral in a neo-Gothic style is called Landakotskirkja. Designed by aforementioned state architect Guðjón Samúelsson in the late 1920s, it would be fully completed in 1929. Although comparable to other Gothic churches, this one's incorporated naturalistic elements of the Icelandic countryside, like that of the basalt columns. And although one might think it is a stone structure at first, it is entirely built out of concrete, the material of choice at the time. At the time of its completion, this was one of the tallest buildings in the entire country. Whether you were on the harbor, in the Reykjavík area, or on the outskirts, you would likely see its tower. The building could have been even taller if the spire was added onto it, but this idea was ultimately scrapped. I would say this building is a must-see if you have a day in Reykjavík. Visit this church in the beautiful Old West Side, and make sure you stop off by the old cemetery as well. You will not regret it, trust me. This church on the list is somewhat in the outskirts of the city, on the way to the municipality of Kópavogur. The placement is situated in a small valley below the Uskallíð hill, which is now famous for the observation deck Perlan. First established in the 1930s as a second cemetery for the city of Reykjavík, as the main one was quickly reaching capacity. A church building would follow suit in the year 1948. To no surprise, Fossvogs Church is primarily used for funeral functions. The cemetery grounds are massive. One can easily spend an hour walking through the rows of graves and lined trees. On top of that, there are some very notable World War II graves for both Ally and Axis soldiers. So if that is something that piques your interest, I highly recommend a stop to this beautiful and peaceful location. It is no doubt one of the more relaxing destinations on this list. Moreover, I highly doubt many tourists visit this one. HerraVintage is a building which a visitor cannot miss, even if they wanted to. A building with 4 impressive spires, the building is a lovely sight on the Reykjavík skyline, along with the Sjómannaskóli building. Designed by Halldór H. Jónsson, the construction began in 1957 and would be fully completed by the year 1965. Aside from the history, there is nothing quite like HerraVintage in Iceland. The design itself is rather simplistic, yet there is a lot of attention put into the overall silhouette. The roof itself is what makes the structure stand out amongst all other church buildings in the country. It is right next to Klambratún Park, which is home of an art museum, so if you're ever in that area, be sure to stop by the church. It wouldn't hurt. We are going back to the center of things for this one, and when I mean the center, I truly mean the center of the city, right here on Austurvöllur. Situated next to the Parliament building is the oldest church in Reykjavík, the Dómkirkja. Finished in the year 1796, it would be the main and only church in the area for practically a century. Built out of durable stone, this lovely building stands out in all the best ways. Although it is the oldest standing church in the city, it replaced a much older church a block away called Víkurkirkja. This church was the parish church of the settlement since the establishment sometime in the 13th and 14th centuries, possibly a little bit older. It was eventually replaced by the current church seen here. The idea was to build a new cathedral on top of the old turf church. However, during the excavation process, many unmarked graves were unearthed of smallpox victims. Because of this revelation, many decided to build further east, closer to the pond. Many of you are likely to see this one as it is a large tourist area. It is practically impossible to miss. But when you do come here, you can walk westward along Kirkjustræti to a small square called Víkurgarður. This is where the old cemetery and church used to be located. Before I go to the last church on this list, I want to give some honorable mentions. Firstly, we have the modernist church designed in the 1940s, Neskirkja. It is located on the west side of town, near the University Cinema. Its quirky modern design is worth a check if you're into this type of architectural style. Next is an old church building in the center of the city, it being the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm honestly not sure when this church was built, but there is nothing quite like it in the entire city. Located on Ingólfsstræti, it is only a few blocks from Fríkirkja, which was mentioned earlier on this list. Lastly, I have a turf-style church building located in the Árbæjar Open Air Museum. It is very small, but a good example of how many church buildings used to look throughout the country in the past. On top of that, the museum is absolutely lovely. Highly recommend it for those who love old architecture. Lastly, but surely not least, is Laugarnes Church, housed in this beautiful streamlined building. Clean lines and symmetry dictate this amazing structure. Like previous buildings on this list, it was designed by, say it with me, Guðjón Samúelsson. You'll be hearing his name quite a lot throughout this channel for sure. In a style called Stöðlabergsstíll, or literally basaltic style, it of course takes inspiration from the natural volcanic landscape of Iceland. The aforementioned Landakotskirkja and Hallgrímskirkja are both in the style pioneered by Guðjón. Located in Laugarnes, westward of the main city, this little community was being planned and built around the late 1930s throughout the 1940s. Characteristic of the period were the no-nonsense, functionalist style apartments, and in the middle, our beautiful landmark church. If you couldn't tell, I truly adore this neighborhood, and the church itself is one of my favorite buildings, likely up there in the top 5 buildings throughout the entire country. In short, there are a lot of interesting church buildings throughout Reykjavík. Even though Hallgrímskirkja is the major landmark that most tourists are going to be coming to see, I do implore those who like architecture to explore a little bit. Perhaps you'll find something here that will pique your fancy. Admittedly, most of the churches within the downtown or capital region are in a modernist style, so some of you might want to know where the more traditional timber-style churches are located. Most of those are going to be out in the countryside. The closest one I can think of at the moment would be Bessastaðir, or in Mosfellsbær, there's a traditional church there. But there is definitely a lot of them out there, so just get out of the city, go on Google Maps, and you can probably find them. They're everywhere. I mean, you can even go to a town like Hafnarfjörður, or you can go to Akranes, and you can find them. They're very close to Reykjavík, so there's something for everybody, even if you can't really find it in the downtown Reykjavík location or in the capital region. But if that is something that you guys are interested in, I can definitely do a video about it and where to go to find these kind of more traditional churches. I think it'd be very interesting. So, that said, I would like to thank everyone that clicked on this video. I truly appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please consider rating the video and subscribing. Perhaps click that bell right next to the subscribe button, because I'll be uploading a lot more videos like this one. With that said, I bid you all farewell. Cheers.